All right, we're live.
Okay, it is 10:44 and I am so excited to call this May 22nd SCRC special meeting to order. Thank you everybody for being here on a Friday and for finding the time to have this additional meeting. We do have two student guests here with us today that are going to have some good insight. I think when we start talking about the composition of the commission, for the sake of time, we won't do like official long introductions, but Brandon Small is our Secretary for Diversity and Inclusion, and Emma Jewell is with the Commuters for Miami. So just to keep that in mind going forward. First thing is the agenda approval. So do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And anyone opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion passes. And then the approval of the minutes from the May 1st meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes of the May 1st meeting.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And all those opposed, say nay. And that passes as well. So moving on to the reports. Laura, do you want to listen?
Yeah, so there's probably a busy couple weeks in general for us, not as busy as it would have been normally. I would say there was normal graduation parties, normal move out parties. They were scaled down, I think, because of the governor's orders, et cetera. Lots of citations were given out for just normal stuff like party litter and noise and things like that. As far as I know, we didn't get a ton of social distancing complaints for residences. However, when the bars opened up for outdoor seating, they did have a little bit of a tough time adjusting to that. And I think the key to that is just that they have to have someone monitor, physically monitor and manage the seating. So restaurants opened up and we have not had any complaints about that. That seems to be going smooth. As I said earlier off the record that I believe it's a little, there's some confusing messaging from the governor's office about the latest mandates and changes, and that was on the 19th. I don't really think there was really any changes to speak of, even though a lot of the press said that there was. They said that there was a lot of, everything was voluntary. Now, that's not true. That's not true. So we kind of go day by day with the governor and try to interpret what is going on there and apply it to here. But fortunately, it's not very needed. Right now, we've had a lot of litter problems because of the move out and the lack of ShareFest being in place and Goodwill not taking a lot and no furniture. That has caused a lot of public ire, and it is disgusting. And we probably will have to come up with a different plan over the next year, I'm guessing.
The city manager and I and Sam Perry have talked about this issue, and I know that council is concerned about it too. So the city manager would like us to revisit this topic next year as an agenda item at the appropriate time. So probably in late winter, early spring. So we should circle back to this. You know, we don't know how things will change for next year between now and then. So by then we could be back to normal where ShareFest can collect things again, but we really don't know at this point. So, but yeah, Laura's right. It's a topic that there are conversations happening about.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this. A lot of students are concerned about it as well, and we're also sad to see that. You know, it's unfortunate that sometimes the most disrespectful students are the most visible, but I know that there is a lot of frustration in the community, so I kind of wanted to express that on behalf of all of the that did do things correctly. And I
And
don't,
then I also overheard a conversation out here on High Street where the parent, she was just panicked because they weren't taking any of the furniture and they just didn't know what to do with it, but they weren't taking it with them. So they'd made a decision to not, even though they had a moving truck there. So I don't know what that was about, but it was just kind of a fascinating moment. I wish that I had on video because I think that was a struggle for her and her daughter who's moving out because you could just sense the panic in both of them.
I look at it through the eyes also of the students. And if I was a student moving out and I'm a senior and I'm not coming back, what do I do with all this stuff? I don't know. I guess I do put it on the curb. I'm not saying, there were times that sidewalks were blocked and alleys were blocked, and that's not acceptable. But other times, we're leaving them no choice but to put it on the curb. I don't know what else they should do.
Yeah.
And so they did kind of what they had to do. It's the pickers that come and destroy everything and make it strewn about. That's a totally different story. That's what makes the total mess.
Yeah.
okay, so I don't think, do we have someone from MUPD here today? I don't think so. So we can move on to old business and discuss the recommendations for the composition of this commission going forward. Andrew, would you like to kind of share the discussions that you've had first, and then I can screen share what Claire and I discussed?
Yeah, so I was talking to my boss, Sam Perry, the community development director, about this the other day. And he had some suggestions that for us about this topic, about like making changes, structural changes to this commission. And I reached out to the city manager. The city manager and council, they're kind of concerned right now about our boards and commissions growing and that they'd like to keep the numbers the same. So I ran by the city manager what we had talked about with adding commission members and then changing the International Student Association representative to a more general term, because I think Cheryl said that there were like over a dozen international student organizations. Oh, Claire is joining us right now, actually. And he understood the reasons for wanting to change that role in making the commission more reflective of the community and the student community too. And then we also talked about like changing the members from voting to, or from non-voting ex officio to voting members. And he said that he could go either way on that. So that was the gist of the conversation that I had with him.
Yeah. Claire, are you there?
She is muted at this point. There
Hey.
she is.
You came in at the perfect time, so we were just talking about the composition of the commission. Do you want to share what we discussed regarding that, or do you want me to?
Oh, sure thing. We can kind of like bounce back, but one of our main things we kind of discussed at the beginning of our talk about it at the last meeting was deciding whether we were going to change from having some members only be ex officio and changing them to voting. We decided against that for now, just to kind of keep the composition, but that's definitely something that you can all reevaluate if you want next year. And Megan, how about I let you go into the specifics that way?
Yeah, sure. So what Claire and I discussed is changing the international student representation to be a voting member, but we would not be changing the number, because instead of having like we already have Miami student vacancies, and so we're just going to be intentional about filling that vacancy with an international student and expanding the scope of that. Brand, the issue that we've run into in the past is that because right now we say specifically the International Student Association, sometimes we just have no international student because it says it has to come from that specific organization. So do those changes that I just mentioned in regards to international students from your perspective sound like more inclusive, or what are your thoughts on that?
You're asking me, right? Sorry, you cut out for a second.
So right now we have an International Student Association ex officio member that we would like to become a voting member, but expand it so that it doesn't have to be specifically from the International Student Association, but rather any international student organization.
Yeah, I think that that's fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So because we would be doing that, we would basically have another ex officio member that we could fill. And so Claire and I discussed potentially somebody from the Health and Wellness Office designee. We thought that that made sense because of health is obviously going to be a huge concern going into this year. And we do have health and wellness representative from like the Oxford side of things. So that was our recommendation there. And then also adding a Commuters of Miami representative as an ex officio member. Emma, does that sound good to you? Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So I'll open it up to everyone to share their thoughts on both Andrew, Claire, and I's kind of recommendations or ask questions of our guests or ourselves.
I just have a question. I'm looking at the composition right now.
Mm-hmm.
So is the International Student Association rep the only like multicultural figure within this composition?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there something else that you would like to see? Because now would be the time to like make those changes.
Yeah. I would throw into the ring like the Diversity Affairs Council president. I think that it's really great to have an international student themselves sit on this, because I think that oftentimes their perspective is, at least for me, I find a little bit challenging to represent, because that's such a different experience than what most people have. And I think that having a voice for all of the other underrepresented and marginalized voices might be beneficial in some of these decisions,
Right.
especially with dealing with things related to COVID-19. I think that a lot of those issues disproportionately affect marginalized communities. And I think that having a voice that would be able to express those concerns might be useful.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to, I think if you think it'll be useful, I'll share my screen to show like what these changes would actually look like. If I can pull it up really quickly. And feel free to weigh in while I'm doing this, everyone, sorry. Claire, do you have it pulled up? I'm having trouble finding your document.
Yeah, I think I do. Let me
Sorry.
Yes. So here we go. It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Oh.
So I'm not sure I can do that.
Okay, so basically what I'll try to like describe this. What we're proposing is changing the one representative from each of the following Miami University recognized organizations to include IFC, PanHealth, Graduate Student Association, Commuters of Miami, and then DAC. And maybe that would be a better use of the ex officio member than the health and wellness, based on Brandon's recommendation. And then as far as voting members, we've written additionally special emphasis will be placed on finding an international student to fill at least one of these positions.
Are you able to see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Megan, I think these are great additions. I guess my question for all the students on the call, and I know we've had a little bit of a hard time getting students to come to our meetings. And so I just am curious from all of you, does this feel doable? Do you feel like we're going to be able to get students here for all of these spots? What could we do to make this a little bit more of an appealing experience, time frame, et cetera, to make that happen?
Yeah, I think it being on a Friday is always going to be an obstacle, but I think that the way that we've done this with the organizations and remaining flexible with the representation is going to help us keep those student representatives on the commission, because there's kind of obligation from two organizations then, right? Like it's something else that they're involved in and really passionate about, and then also being here at SCRC. I don't know if the other students agree with me, but that's kind of like my thought process.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It was just like flexibility with who's able to come to the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if there's an issue that a particular student or student group is worried about or interested in, they, as an ex officio, they could come and represent that. So it might be used periodically.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be good to have somebody there to represent that. I don't know what kind of issue that would be right now. Maybe you could think of some examples.
Scott, did you have something to add?
Well, I was going to add, well, there were two things, and one was for number 2, and I guess it's been a while since I've looked at this. So I think it's the Miami University Vice President of Student Life or Vice President's designee. I don't know. That's just what it's morphed into for the last 5 or 6 years. So it's really, and I don't know, Andrew, maybe you could chime in, but number 2 it's the Vice President is either designated the Dean of Students or myself.
I think you mean under ex officio, Scott? Like
yeah, under ex, oh yeah, I'm sorry, number 2 under ex officio. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah. So the Miami University Coordinator of Off-Campus Affairs, that position's been terminated, right?
It's been terminated / absorbed by me. Yes.
So you've been doing double duty as number 2 and 3. Because you're the dean's designee right now.
Yeah, but I don't know which one am I then? Am I 3? So it's kind of, you know, it kind of morphed, Andrew, when we talked about like when we TGIT, when all those were meeting, we kind of split and divided and said. So I guess I'm trying to make sure we're not missing. Have we been missing somebody for the last couple of years from my office or my area?
Well, you've been pulling double duty representing both the dean and off-campus affairs. So I think that in this case, the Miami University Coordinator of Off-Campus Affairs would go away and it would be replaced by Miami University Health and Wellness Administrator. So my question for Megan and Claire, is that a single person or is that an office?
The way we had kind of discussed it to like keep flexibility is that the office could appoint basically like who they wanted to. So that like we're not,
so we would say
the right person should be, it's kind of like to their discretion, similar to how like technically like Scott is a designee, right?
Yep. So we would just tack on to the end of this then, or designee.
Right.
Exactly. Yep, that'd be great.
And then, Andrew, since you're the one screen sharing, would you add DAC under one of representative from each of the following MU recognized organizations?
Yeah, this is a PDF, so.
Oh, okay.
Or designee. Okay.
I noticed over the last year or so that the attendance wasn't always really good under the number 2 area. But I think from a town standpoint.
Number 2 in the voting members?
In the ex officio, yes.
Oh, okay.
And the fact that Scott's been here real regularly has made that important, because that's where we who are town representatives get our information from this meeting. So having that person, whoever it is, it's real important that they be regular at the meetings.
Yeah, so prove, and that's where I guess, Andrew, that's where, and maybe we have a conversation for the summer. So full disclosure, I think the number 2 under ex officio, we saw more as a student life role, that instead of the dean of students taking on that role, I, as the assistant vice president, took on that role.
Yeah.
So I think if I think of the way we've looked at this the last couple of years, and that's where I apologize if we totally were, somebody was supposed to be here that wasn't, I've been playing that number 2 as kind of the vice president's designee. And if anything, maybe I should have had somebody fill the number 3. Does that make sense as to what I'm saying?
Yep.
So if we look at the way things have evolved over the last, I'll say 3 years,
Yeah.
when we tried to make sure we weren't pulling double or triple duty, I became, as the assistant vice president, kind of that liaison that maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years ago the dean of students was playing. So I thought we'd had that conversation a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it was, I meet with Kimberly regularly and Steve regularly, and if there's anything to come forward, we bring it forward. And if we go to the quarterly meetings that Jessica set up, Steve and Kimberly come to those. We have a larger meeting. So
yeah,
and that's been fine.
Yeah,
that's been fine since it says or dean's designee. It's worked out okay. We haven't had to change the ordinance, to change the composition officially. I think because you're still here on behalf of Kim, right? Kim?
I'm here on behalf of Miami Student Life. So yeah, so I guess I'm playing. I guess that's the role that I was playing. Yes.
But we can change that if it shouldn't say dean of students or dean's designee. If we should change it to be more accurate for today and going forward.
Yeah, I would change it to either be the vice president's designee or it's just the AVP.
AVP.
Yeah. Assistant vice president. Yeah.
Oh.
Unless somebody knows something about my future that I don't know.
No, I struggle with acronyms, so I apologize.
No, that's okay.
well, and I was going to say, just as long as whatever it is, 2 or 3 adequately explains what this position is.
Yeah. So if you change, so under this format, under this format, if you change number 2 to the Miami University Vice President of Student Life designee, that would be me. And then the new one that Megan and Claire have suggested could be like a Steve Large, or if we want to talk about counseling, he could send, he could send Rebecca Baudry for wellness. He could send one of the counselors to talk about mental health. So that's
Great. Scott.
And the question really is, do we use Dean of Students anymore or not?
Yeah, no, we do have, I guess part of it is maybe structurally the last 4 or 5 years, some changes we made in student life is that if you take Kimberly as the dean, Steve Large as an assistant vice president, me as an assistant vice president, we're interchangeable on a lot of these things. Or if there was something, gosh, you really wanted Kimberly to come, I would just say, come join me. So
that's good.
So let me try to sum up these changes since we can't see like the edits that Andrew's been making. So ex officio number 2 will be the Miami University VP of Student Life designee, right? Does that sound correct? Okay. And then number 3 is going to be our Miami University Health and Wellness designee, basically. And then number 9 will include IFC, PanHealth, graduate students, and a representative from DAC. And then,
so Megan, can I ask a question about number 9? So if we go IFC, Panhellenic, we're leaving out MPHC. So I don't know if that's, so there's a third Greek council that we may want to have. And I don't know if we're trying to keep it smaller, do we have somebody from IFC and Panhellenic be one and MPHC be two, or just so there's a third major council in that group of three?
That's a good point. Claire and I discussed that also, but if we're trying to not change the members, basically, we could either just get rid of the health and wellness administrator and include the NPHC. It's kind of what is everyone's thoughts on that?
Well, the other thing you could, I'll give a suggestion. A and B could be, so 9A and B could be, it could be 1 year it's IFC and MPHC. It could be the next year it's panel. So it could be two. We could just say, you could say 2 Greek council representatives for A and B, and that way you still keep 3.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a committee member, I'd love to see even one student come in for any of those. Like that's been the area where I don't know in my 4 years on this commission that I've ever seen a student represented. It would be great to have them here. So even if we go down to 1 and we rotate through the councils, or like whatever works on your end to get somebody, in the room on a regular basis would be awesome.
Yeah.
Because if you just think about a diversity of opinion, IFC and Panhellenic, you're going to get the same kind of approach. MPHC is going to bring a different perspective. So
Yeah.
IFC and Panhellenic, you're kind of getting you're going to get a very similar message, whereas MPHC will give you a slightly different voice than IFC and Panhellenic would provide.
Yeah. Well, let's say 2 Greek council representatives. I like that. And then my approach will be to have either IFC or Panhell, and then NPHC. But it kind of gives flexibility going forward.
And what is MPHC?
What is it? I don't know exactly what it is.
National
It's our
Panhellenic Council,
Yeah,
or no?
it's our historically African American fraternities and sororities, Andrew.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, NPHC.
Yes.
So I don't hear any huge objections to what we've kind of this working construction we have so far. So do we want a motion to approve this construction or this composition going forward?
So these are recommendations to council. So
Okay.
So we'll be recommending to council
First.
this. So Glenn, who's not here today, I don't think he's with us right now, but I'll work with him to get the legislation prepared. So it's up to you guys how you want to do this. If you want to do one vote for everything or break it down, it's completely up to you.
I have one suggestion about, we're going to have 2 of the 3 represented each year. You might want to start with 1 junior and 1 senior. So then the junior would be on the next year. And then when the senior leaves, they would get a junior. So there would be some continuity from year to year.
I think in an ideal world, that is how it will work. I don't know that I'm not sure, like I'm hesitant to put that in writing as our recommendations, because then if we can't get a junior.
I agree. I just think in the back of our minds, sort of like that's just make life easier for everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank you.
So I think do I hear a motion to just vote on this collectively? That would be my recommendation.
I so move.
Okay.
Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor of approving the aforementioned recommendations for the composition of the commission in the following year, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. And it passes. Great.
Well, and anyone who's abstaining?
Okay. And that is it for our agenda. So do I hear another motion?
Well, before we go there, I just wondered from the city staff side, does anybody have any suggestions for me going forward, how I could do better or do something different that would assist the commission?
Yeah.
Well, if anybody has anything, just email me or call me and we can talk about it. So thanks.
I guess what I forwarded in the last week or so that had to do with the social distance and face masks and people of the town noticing parties and then not knowing where to go. That was a good example of how the committee should work. And so I think to pass this and then review it next spring or something like that would be a good idea.
Sounds great.
Anyway, Andrew, you were the person that I went to, I think, didn't I?
You forwarded it to me and then I forwarded it to Laura.
Okay. It's that kind of thing. Who do we forward it to? How does the public get in touch with us?
Get in touch with the commission.
Yes. Members.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about a new city website and how to reformat our boards and commissions and make them more accessible to the public and let the public know their rights for approaching boards and commissions, because it's different depending on the board or commission.
That's
so
correct.
Some of our boards are quasi-judicial, so they're hearings, so they're not everybody has standing to appear at those meetings. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at, and like SCRC is completely open to the public, so anybody can attend our meetings or approach us. So maybe by next year we'll have a new city website that maybe makes this a little clearer on how to get in touch with us and attend our meetings and such.
Yeah. It happened with the scooters too. That was another good example about how do we get in touch with who we want to say. So.
Oh my gosh, the scooters, I haven't even thought about them in so long.
Sorry to bring it up. Sorry.
It's been so long since I've even thought about them.
I know.
That seems like years ago that we had that conversation.
I know.
Jessica said the scooters are coming back in the fall.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. A lot of those companies are not doing well right now.
Right.
Also, I wanted to kind of go back. So now that we have approved what we want to send to, the new structure, Megan, how are we going to encourage more student participation? How are we recruiting students and how are we going to get them to show up?
Yeah, so I kind of have a two-part answer to that. One is that I think the time, unfortunately, because it's on a Friday, is a surprisingly big thing for students. So that's always going to be an obstacle. So when we discuss the time in August when students know their schedule more, that's one way that we can make it easier for students to come. The second thing is that my approach to the year is that when a student who's really passionate about something comes to me and says, I want to work on this, this, and this, and it's outside the scope of the three things that I'm focusing on in my position or the SCRC is focusing on maybe for the year or whatever, I'm going to say, here are the ways that you can get involved to be the voice for this cause. And joining this commission is one of the suggestions that I'm going to give them. And then I think the changes that we made today will be also really helpful with that. Because I'm going through another organization that will know who the best person on those topics and who the most passionate and dedicated people are. Does that answer your question? And I'm open to any other, suggestions and thoughts on keeping those positions filled going forward. Okay. Is there anything else anybody would like to say before we hear a motion for adjournment?
Nope.
So do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Good
summer.
summer.
Yes, really appreciate you being here. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.